If it weren't for my son's essay, I might have never known that the other woman in my marriage taught my child every day. People often think affairs start with passion, with stolen glances, trembling hands, or late-night texts. Mine started with a third-grade writing assignment. My name is Emily, I'm 32, a trauma nurse in Austin, Texas. I've worked night shifts for years, at first because of the pay. Later because it gave me time with my son during the day. My husband, Mark, is a quiet man, a software engineer. He works from home, barely talks unless you talk first, and used to bring me coffee every morning before I slept. We've been married for almost 10 years. We have a son, Leo. He just turned 8. Leo is my sunshine, smart, sensitive, always drawing or asking questions. When he started 3rd grade this year, I was relieved to see how excited he was. The reason? His teacher, Miss Amanda. Amanda is 25, young, vibrant, and adored by the kids. She sent regular updates to the parents, photos of class projects, emails about homework, even birthday wishes. She was the kind of teacher I wished I had growing up. We invited her over once after the school science fair. She was polite, brought a bottle of wine, complimented my cooking even though it was just frozen lasagna. Leo sat between her and Mark the whole dinner, smiling ear to ear. I thought it was sweet. I thought it was harmless. In fact, I thought Amanda was a blessing. She seemed to care deeply about Leo, praising his reading level, encouraging his art. Once, when I was late for pickup, she waited with him by the gates, chatting with him like he was her own brother. Mark told me he thought she was impressive, that the kids needed more teachers like her. I agreed. That's how they get you. The ones who don't look like a threat. Everything felt normal. Our home was quiet, orderly, happy in a kind of routine way. Mark cooked dinner on nights I worked. Leo would FaceTime me to say good night. Sometimes I'd come home at 5 a.m. and find the two of them asleep on the couch. Cartoons still playing on mute. Then one day, Leo brought home a writing prompt titled, "A Night I'll Never Forget." It was part of a literacy assignment. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee, half reading it, expecting something about a family vacation or his birthday. But I stopped breathing around the second paragraph. He wrote, "That night Mom went to the hospital again. Dad said we could have pizza. Then Miss Amanda came. She wore red. They laughed a lot. We watched a movie on the big TV. I was sleepy. I went to bed. Dad said don't tell Mom. He kissed her cheek in the hallway." I reread it 5 times. My fingers curled around the page. He kissed her cheek in the hallway. A 3rd grader doesn't invent that kind of detail. Not when he's writing about his teacher and his father. I didn't say anything to Mark that night. I watched him like I was studying a stranger. The way he poured his wine. The way he asked Leo about math homework. The way he smiled at me like we were still a team. I smiled back. Inside, something dark began to grow. But I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I convinced myself Leo misunderstood. Maybe Amanda dropped something off. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was exhausted. Then I noticed something else. Leo drew a picture in crayon, 3 people holding hands in the park. One was him. One was Mark. One was Amanda. I asked, "Where's Mommy?" He shrugged. "You were working." My heart didn't break. It cracked, silently. That week, I tried to find footage from our home security camera. It was part of a smart home package Mark installed last year. But when I logged in, there was no footage from the past month. Just gaps, a red triangle flashing, data unavailable. When I asked Mark, he said there was a system bug. He promised to fix it. He kissed my forehead. I kissed him back. Then I called a private investigator. Because somewhere deep in my gut, I already knew, and I couldn't afford to look away anymore. They say the worst part of betrayal is the moment right before you find out. When everything still looks normal. Amanda's smile, Mark's quiet voice, Leo's innocent drawings, all of it was a stage. And I was the only one who hadn't read the script. It all started with a boy, a pencil, and a teacher he trusted. It ended with me realizing that while I was out saving lives, someone else had quietly stolen mine. There was a parent-teacher conference scheduled mid-semester. Just a routine thing. Amanda wasn't there. The school principal explained she had taken a few personal days, and another teacher had temporarily taken over her class. I didn't think much of it. Teachers are allowed personal lives. But when I was handed a folder with Leo's recent assignments, my hand lingered on the one with a red star sticker in the top corner. It was titled, "A Special Night." I sat down in the back of the classroom to read it. I don't remember breathing as my eyes scanned each sentence. That night, Mom had to go save people again. Dad said we could have pizza. Then Miss Amanda came. She wore a red dress and smelled like flowers. They sat on the couch and laughed a lot. We watched a movie. I wanted to sit between them, but Dad said I should sleep. I heard him tell her, "You always make it better." Then he said, "Don't tell Mom." So I didn't. The paper trembled in my hands. I closed the folder and smiled at the other parents. Said thank you to the substitute teacher. Walked out with a strange sense of gravity in my chest. My body moved on autopilot, but my mind replayed every word, every syllable, every line from that tiny hand that didn't know he was documenting a betrayal. That night at home, I asked Leo what he liked most about school. He said, "Miss Amanda lets me tell stories. She says I remember things well." I smiled, but it wasn't joy. It was pain wrapped in plastic. Pretending to be fine. When Leo went to bed, I sat alone on the couch and opened my phone. I scrolled back through every photo Amanda had sent. Leo doing a science experiment. Leo reading. Leo smiling in front of a project about planets. But something felt off now. Like static under the surface. Like the warmth I used to see was tainted by something too close. Then I noticed the timestamps. Multiple photos sent around 7:30 or 8 p.m. That's when I was usually on my busiest shift. That's when Mark said he was putting Leo to bed. And then I checked Amanda's classroom schedule. She had started coming in later some mornings, citing personal development training, but on the exact mornings after my night shifts. It was too precise, too convenient. The next day, Leo was drawing at the kitchen table. He asked without looking up, "Mom, would you be sad if Miss Amanda became Dad's girlfriend?" I dropped the spoon I was holding. It clattered against the sink. My voice was calm, but inside I was a storm. "Why would you say that?" I asked. Leo shrugged. "Just wondering. She makes Dad laugh a lot." I laughed too, but it wasn't real. I looked at my reflection in the kitchen window and barely recognized the woman staring back. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine. I sat at Mark's computer, the one he never let me touch. I typed in the password I guessed long ago, Amanda 1987. It didn't work. I tried again. Amanda Leo. Wrong. Third try. Emily 123. Still no luck. The glass of wine sat untouched. So I tried the security camera again. Our fancy smart home system Mark insisted on. It showed the backyard, the front door, the hallway, but only for the last 5 days. All data before that, gone, deleted, corrupted. When I asked him, he said, "Oh, yeah, I think the cloud storage glitched. I'll reset it." He didn't look guilty, just distant, and I played along. But I knew, in my bones, in my blood, in the quiet places between breaths, I knew. I started noticing more, a strand of hair on the bathroom sink too light to be mine. A perfume I didn't own lingering on Mark's jacket. Receipts from takeout places I never ate at. But what hurt most weren't the signs. It was Leo, caught in the middle, carrying secrets he didn't understand. At night, I heard him talking in his sleep. Sometimes he said Amanda's name. Once, he mumbled, "Don't tell Mommy." I held his hand until he settled. And then I cried. Each day became a performance. Smiling through breakfast, driving to work, coming home to quiet lies. The routine was the same, but I was unraveling. I didn't confront Mark, not yet. Instead, I bought a notebook and started writing everything down. Dates, words, glances, all the things he thought I didn't see. Because the truth was no longer just about betrayal. It was about preparing for the moment I'd no longer pretend. And that moment, I felt, was coming fast. 6 days. That's all it took. When I hired the private investigator, I expected long hours of nothing. Maybe a dinner, a photo or two. I wasn't prepared for 43 pictures in less than a week. The manila envelope was thicker than I expected. It had weight, not just in paper, but in consequences. I opened it in the parking lot of the pharmacy, under the cold glow of a flickering light. My hands didn't tremble, they were steady, too steady. The first photo, Mark driving. Amanda in the passenger seat. Her face turned toward him, laughing, his hand resting just near the gearshift, dangerously close to hers. Second photo, they're walking into a restaurant. A quiet Italian place we used to go for anniversaries. Her hand grazes the small of his back as he holds the door. Third photo, them exiting a hotel. Not even discreet. Broad daylight. He's holding her purse. She's buttoning her coat. Fourth, at a local coffee shop. She touches his chest lightly while waiting for their order. He smiles, like a man completely at ease. Fifth, Amanda's car parked in front of our house. Leo in the back seat. Amanda driving. Mark nowhere in sight. Each photo was a needle. Not stabbing, but sliding in slow and deep. I flipped through all 43. Slowly, deliberately. I memorized the colors they wore. The shoes. The backgrounds. Her hair tied up. His wedding rings still on. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, cataloging betrayal in high resolution. When I got home, I chose 3 photos. Not the most damning, just the ones that said the most with the least. Mark laughing with her outside the hotel. Her leaning into him in the car. Leo in her backseat. I printed them. Matte finish. 4x6. Then I walked to Leo's room. He was at a friend's sleepover. I opened his toy chest. The blue one with the Lego stickers. Inside, under the false bottom drawer where Mark always hid little surprise toys, was where I placed the photos. No note, no confrontation, just quiet proof, tucked where secrets once lived. The next morning, I left early, took my shift 2 hours ahead. My phone buzzed at 7:13 a.m. It was Mark. His voice was frantic, not angry, not defensive, just broken. Emily, what the hell? Did Leo see these? I didn't pause. No, I said calmly, but he's seen more than you think. I just thought it was time you saw it too. There was silence, then a breath, then a choke. Emily, I'm sorry, I didn't. You did, I interrupted. You just didn't think I'd find out from him. He started to say something else. But I hung up. I stood in the hospital hallway. Lights flickering overhead, the sharp scent of disinfectant in the air. It was the cleanest place I'd ever felt so contaminated. The rest of the day blurred. People bleeding, crying, dying, and all I could see was Amanda's smile in photo 32. The tilt of her head. The way Mark looked at her like he used to look at me. When I came home that night, Mark was sitting on the couch, eyes bloodshot, the 3 photos in his hand. I never meant for him to be involved. He whispered, "That's the only thing you managed to do." I replied, "You didn't just lie to me. You used our son as a cover story." He didn't deny it. He didn't beg. He just looked down at the pictures, as if hoping they'd change. I walked past him, took a shower, scrubbed my skin until it turned red. In bed that night, I stared at the ceiling. Mark didn't join me. Leo came in sometime around midnight. Curled beside me, small and warm and full of unknowing trust. He whispered, "Daddy cried." I held him tighter. I didn't want him to hate his father. I just wanted him to stop believing in lies. The next morning, I gave Mark the papers. Divorce documents, neatly stacked. He looked at them, eyes glassy. "You already printed these?" "I've had them for 3 days." I said, "I just needed you to see first." He didn't fight, didn't resist. He just nodded. Before he left, Leo ran out to him, hugged him, said, "You can still come to my birthday, right?" Mark's voice cracked. "Of course, buddy." I watched it all, silent, no tears, just that ache, that hollow space between rage and relief. Because sometimes the deepest cuts don't bleed. They echo. And that echo was now part of our house. Our son. Our story. I didn't get revenge. I didn't throw plates. I handed him the truth and walked away. Because I wasn't just a woman who got cheated on. I was a mother who refused to let her child learn love through deception. And that, above all, was my line. The divorce was finalized quietly. No court fights, no dramatic scenes, just signatures on paper and a silence that echoed louder than any scream. Mark moved into a small apartment downtown. Amanda resigned a week later. Or maybe she was forced out. Parents had started asking questions. And schools don't like scandals involving children. Leo didn't ask much. He simply accepted things with the fragile understanding only children can have. He stopped mentioning Amanda. He stopped drawing family portraits. He just stopped. We started therapy together. It wasn't about fixing him. It was about giving him room to breathe, to speak, to be confused and angry and scared without thinking he had to protect me. But Leo didn't talk much. Not at first. He'd sit there holding a toy, eyes on the carpet, lips tight. Every now and then, he'd ask, "Is Dad coming back?" I never said no. I just said, "Not the same way." Nights became the hardest. That's when the quiet settled in. That's when he'd crawl into my bed and whisper dreams I wish he didn't have. "Mom," he said once, "I dreamed Dad disappeared. I couldn't find him. I was yelling, but no one answered. I held him close, my chin resting on his hair. It's just a dream, baby, but it keeps happening," he whispered. We upped his therapy sessions. One night, after a particularly long shift, I found Leo in the living room, curled up with his blanket, staring at the television though it wasn't on. I sat beside him. He looked up at me with those two wise eyes. "Was I wrong for telling you what I saw?" That question hurt more than anything Mark had done. I wrapped my arms around him and pulled him onto my lap. "No, sweetheart, no, you were brave. You told the truth. Grown-ups were the ones who didn't." His small hands clutched my shirt. "But if I didn't tell, maybe Daddy would still be here." Tears slid down my cheek before I could stop them. I didn't let go. "Daddy made choices. Leo, you only told the truth. That's never wrong." "Okay," he nodded into my chest. But he didn't say anything else. Weeks passed, then months. Leo laughed again. Eventually, he started drawing again. Rockets. Trees. A dog he wanted someday. Never people. I didn't hear from Amanda again. Not even once. Part of me hoped she'd apologize. Part of me hoped she never would. Mark saw Leo on weekends. They kept it light. Movies. The zoo. Bowling. But Leo didn't curl into his side like he used to. He kept a sliver of space between them. Like he wasn't sure if love could still be safe. On Leo's next birthday, he turned 9. We had cake, balloons, cousins running around the yard. Mark came, stayed on the edges, helped serve pizza. Amanda was nowhere in sight. She'd become the ghost neither of us dared name. After everyone left, Leo and I sat at the table. The candles burned low. "Mom," he said, "I don't remember last year's birthday." I did. It was the night I found his drawing, the 3 people in the park. The night I knew something was wrong. The night I couldn't sleep. I looked at him, his cheeks smudged with frosting, his eyes softer than they'd been in months. "You may not," I whispered, "but I remember the night you helped me wake up from a dream I didn't know I was having." He tilted his head. "What dream?" "A dream where everything seemed perfect. But it wasn't real." He didn't quite understand, but he nodded anyway. I kissed his forehead. "Thank you for being my truth." That night, after he fell asleep, I cleaned the kitchen slowly. I held the last slice of cake, stared out the window, and let the silence sit beside me, not as a punishment, but as peace. Because there's a price to silence. It builds inside you until one day it spills out. And someone you love has to carry the pieces with you. But sometimes, if you're lucky, those pieces become something new. Not the same family, not the same home, but something honest. And maybe that's enough. Emily's story ends not with vengeance, but with quiet strength, the kind that takes root in truth and grows through pain. But not all betrayals are met with such stillness. Next, We head to Houston, where one man installed a dashcam to feel safer while traveling for work, and instead watched his entire marriage unravel on a screen. When Travis saw the footage of his wife welcoming another man into their home, he didn't confront her. He disappeared for 72 hours. What he came back with was something no one expected. Stay with us for story number 2. Travis from Houston. He caught his wife on dashcam, then vanished for 72 hours.